She left 3 weeks after our wedding with my hoodie and a promise meant for someone else. Name's Caleb 52 construction foreman. The steak I cooked that night went cold medium rare like the silence she left behind. Ever tried planting tomatoes just to stay sane? What would you do if your wife came back pregnant with someone else's goodbye? I wasn't supposed to be there that afternoon, but sometimes a reluctant yes turns into the story that rewrites your life. Tom had texted me the day before. No more hiding, man. Come meet someone who laughs like she means it. I didn't reply right away. I stared at the message for an hour before tossing my phone on the counter. Grief makes you wary of strangers, especially the kind who smile too easily. But I'd told myself this year would be different. I'd try just once not to retreat. So I went. It was late spring in Boise, one of those Saturdays where the light hangs around a little longer than usual. The barbecue was held at Tom's cousin's backyard, folding tables covered with checkered cloths, kids chasing each other barefoot on the grass, and a Bluetooth speaker playing Fleetwood Mac like someone had good taste, but bad signal. I kept to the edge, sipping a soda, nodding to people who looked familiar, but didn't seem to place me. The grill smoked near the fence. Somewhere a dog barked every few minutes, like it had a quota to meet. Then I saw her. Vanessa was scraping paper plates into a trash bag, laughing with a little girl who had mustard on her cheek. She wasn't scrolling her phone or adjusting her hair for someone watching. She moved like someone who didn't mind being noticed, but didn't need it either. Tom nudged me. That's who I wanted you to meet. I raised an eyebrow. Because she recycles, no. Because you look like you haven't exhaled in months, and she knows how to make people breathe. I hated how well he knew me. Eventually, introductions were made. Vanessa offered me a plastic fork, joking that it was the only weapon allowed here. I laughed an actual out-loud laugh. That hadn't happened in a while. We bonded over our mutual dislike of sweet barbecue sauce. Why ruin something perfectly good with sugar? She asked, making a face. Exactly. Let meat be meat. And don't even get me started on reality dating shows, she added. If one more man says he's here for the right reasons, I'm gonna launch my TV. That was our first moment. Some people connect over deep philosophies. We connected over grilled meat and bad television. Later, while the crowd thinned and someone strung dim lights across the back fence, we found ourselves sitting on lawn chairs by the fire pit, knees almost touching. I never learned how to grill, she admitted, fiddling with a twig. I offered without thinking I could show you one day. She smiled, not coy, not forced. Just honest, I might hold you to that. We talked about our favorite cereals as kids. She confessed she used to line her stuffed animals up like a classroom and give them spelling tests. I told her I used to pretend my dog was a secret agent. When the conversation shifted to parents, we both slowed down. My mom passed away when I was 27, I said. She didn't flinch. Mine too. Grief doesn't teach you much except how little people really know what to say. That's when she said it. You don't talk much, but when you do, it lands. And for the first time in years, I felt like someone saw me, not just the parts I let out, but the ones I buried so deep I forgot they were mine. We left around the same time. She gave me her number without fanfare, just a soft, call me sometime or text. I answer both. I saved her in my phone as Vanessa BBQ. At the time, I thought it was clever. I didn't know I'd one day delete it just to stop checking if she'd texted. She looked like spring and promise, in that vineyard bare shoulders kissed by sunlight, a white dress catching the breeze just enough to flutter like pages of a well-worn book. I looked like a man who thought promises were enough. Not just the vow we spoke in front of friends and grapevines, but all the quiet, unseen promises I made to her in my heart. The wedding was simple, just how she wanted it. No fancy ballrooms, no choreographed dances, just sunlight filtering through trellised leaves in Caldwell, a playlist she'd made on Spotify, and a handmade arch her best friend Miranda insisted on decorating with sage and wildflowers. When I kissed her at the altar, she laughed a little through her tears and whispered, "You smell like cedarwood and panic." We didn't have a big honeymoon, just borrowed time and 2 nights near Payette Lake. We did puzzles on the porch, argued playfully over board games, and ate too much local trout. There were photos of us smiling, unfiltered, unforced. She touched my shoulder when she laughed, and I remember thinking, this is it. This is home. But home has a funny way of changing shape. Back in Boise, our new place smelled like paint and potential. We made plans to hang art, to host friends, to buy a dog once things settled. The rooms were filled with quiet, soft evenings. I cooked more. She worked later. I didn't mind at first. I knew the nonprofit she worked for had deadlines, grants meaning. But the way she walked through the door each night, tired, distant, sometimes distracted, made the house feel colder than it should have been in August. One night, she stood by the kitchen island, half laughing at her phone. She looked up, noticed me watching, and said, "It's Jared. He's sick again. Just checking in." I hadn't heard that name in years. I remembered it vaguely from some old story she once told me. College days, youthful chaos. Someone who once mattered but no longer did. Or so I thought. She didn't say more. Just slipped the phone into her back pocket and poured herself a glass of wine. We watched a movie that night, but her mind was somewhere else. I could tell. Her body leaned against me, but her soul felt 3 states over. Later that week, Miranda stopped by. She handed Vanessa a small velvet pouch. "For clarity," she said. "It's Labradorite. Helps when you're reconnecting with unfinished things." They talked in the living room for a while. I stayed in the kitchen, pretending to do the dishes. Their laughter sounded like a language I no longer understood. I called my mom the next day. She'd only met Vanessa once at the wedding. She'd liked her well enough, but she wasn't blind. "She's lovely, son," Mom said, her voice gentle as always. "But she's somewhere else in her head sometimes, isn't she?" I didn't know how to respond to that, so I said nothing. Just held the phone to my ear like it might carry an answer I wasn't ready to hear. That Friday night after dinner, Vanessa sat on the back step, scrolling through her phone. I joined her, coffee in hand. Crickets hummed in the grass. The air had that end-of-summer weight, thick and a little tired. She didn't look up when she spoke. "What if someone you once loved is dying?" she said, "and you're the only person they trust to show up?" I swallowed. Slowly. "And what am I to you now?" I asked. She turned her head just a little enough for me to see the edge of her profile, the tired pull of her mouth. "That's not fair," she whispered. Fair. I didn't even know what that meant anymore. We didn't speak the rest of the evening. She watched the moon rise from the porch swing. I lay in bed pretending to read, listening for footsteps that never came. That night, she didn't kiss me goodnight. She just rolled over, pulled the blanket to her chin, and whispered, "Don't make this harder." Harder than what I didn't ask. Maybe because deep down I knew the answer. She didn't slam the door. She folded my gray sweatshirt, the one she always borrowed when it rained, and placed it neatly beside the sink sleeves tucked like arms at rest. Then she left. That was it. I had just set the table. 2 plates. Grilled steak, her favorite medium rare, charred at the edges. Mashed potatoes with extra butter the way she liked them. Homemade cornbread. The house smelled like October and rosemary. I'd even lit the candle in the mason jar she once said made dinner feel like a date, even on a Tuesday. The dog Milo sat near the table, watching the door. She was late. I remember the rain tapping against the window like a second hand counting down. The TV was on mute, a football game humming in the background. I wasn't watching. I just needed the room not to be silent. My phone buzzed. A message from Miranda Vanessa's torn. Be gentle. No explanation. Just that. When Vanessa finally walked in, she didn't look torn. She looked decided. Her coat was damp. Her eyes didn't meet mine. She hung her keys where mine used to be the only ones. "I didn't think you'd cook," she said softly, glancing at the table. "I said we'd talk tonight," I replied, not moving. "This is me keeping that promise." She nodded, walked past the food without a word, set her bag down by the couch, stood by the fireplace staring at the unlit logs. Jared's dying. She didn't even ease into it. She said it like she had practiced it. "Terminal," she added. "Stage 4. Brain cancer. Glioblastoma. 6 months, maybe less." I didn't speak. "He asked me to be with him for whatever time he has left," she continued. "Not romantically, just to help, to be there." "Why you?" I asked. She flinched. "Because I was there before. Because he says I'm the only one who feels real to him. And what are we, Vanessa? What is this marriage to you?" "I'm not walking away from us," she said. "I'm walking toward a promise I made before I ever met you." The words didn't hurt the way betrayal usually does. They stunned. "This isn't about love," she added, as if that made it better. "It's about duty." I sat down at the table, the steak losing its warmth. Milo laid his head on my foot. "You didn't verify anything I said. You're just taking his word for it." She crossed her arms. "So now I'm naive. You think I haven't done my research? I think you're chasing a ghost who knew how to pull your strings." Silence. Heavy. Like wet laundry no one wanted to lift. "Miranda said this could be the universe's way of letting me close a chapter," she whispered. I laughed. It wasn't a good laugh, just air and disbelief. "Miranda thinks crystals can change traffic patterns." She didn't smile. "She's not wrong about everything." There was a long pause. I looked at her then. Really looked. She was tired. Not from work or weather, but from the weight of not wanting to be here anymore. So I said it. Clearly. "You have a choice. Stay and we work through this. Or leave and it ends here. No in between." She stared at the cornbread. I think she wanted to say thank you. Or sorry. Maybe both. But her mouth stayed closed. Her fingers curled around the strap of her bag. She walked to the sink, folded the sweatshirt, placed it carefully. Then she left. No tears. No last words. Just the soft creak of the door and the click of it closing. I sat there for a while. The food had gone cold, but I ate anyway. The steak was still medium rare, still ruined. Milo watched the door like he expected her to come back. She didn't. Later I washed the dishes, scrubbed the pan, put the cornbread in a container she wouldn't open. I folded the napkins, though we hadn't used them, wiped down the table. Routine is funny like that. It keeps your hands busy, while your heart forgets how to move. When I finally lay in bed, her side smelled like her shampoo. Lavender and some scent I never cared to learn the name of. I didn't cry. I just lay there with my eyes open, listening to the sound of nothing. People think betrayal feels like shouting. But sometimes it's a whisper followed by an absence you didn't plan for. And it turns out disappearing can be very loud. When a man says he's dying, you want to believe him. You pray it's not true. You reach for sympathy. You bend your own boundaries in the name of decency. But when he's not, and your wife leaves you anyway, you stop believing everything. The first few calls I ignored. Then I silenced the phone entirely. Milo had his chin on my knee eyes, following every vibration from the counter like it might bark back. I was halfway through stacking split firewood in the shed when Lisa's name popped up. A text, not a call. "She needs to tell you something. You should hear it." I sat in my truck for 20 minutes outside the cafe before I walked in. A neutral place, downtown Boise. People holding lattes like shields against the November wind. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear anything, but I came anyway. Vanessa was already outside, pacing beside a light pole. Hair pulled up sleeves too thin for the weather, a coffee cup trembling in her grip. I stayed in the truck for another minute, watching her try to breathe like the cold would make her stronger. When I stepped out, she looked at me like someone hoping a door wasn't locked yet. "Thanks for coming," she said. I didn't reply. We didn't go inside. Just stood there in the parking lot while leaves scraped along the asphalt like restless thoughts. She got to the point faster than I expected. "I ran into Jared's sister," she began. "At Walgreens." She asked how Jared's cold was. I blinked. Nothing else. I asked her what she meant. She said he had the flu last week but was better now. "No. Cancer. No diagnosis. Nothing." She looked down at her cup like there might be answers floating in the foam. I drove straight to his place. He didn't deny it. He said, "You came back, didn't you? Like it was some kind of game." Her voice cracked on the last word. "He said it was worth lying just to see if you'd still come. And I did. Like an idiot." She looked at me, eyes bloodshot, not from makeup, but from sleep lost over someone who didn't deserve it. "I feel sick, Caleb. I feel humiliated." I nodded slowly. Not to agree, not to comfort, just to acknowledge the words existed in the air. She took a step closer. "I made the wrong choice." "No," I said quietly. "You made a choice." "That's different." Her hands fidgeted with the cup lid. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought, stop." She stopped. "You didn't choose wrong," I continued. "You chose him. That was the choice. You had a husband, you had a life, and you chose to leave for someone else's past." She flinched. "I thought he was dying." "And if he was," I said, letting the wind carry my words, "you'd still be there." That was it. That was the sentence I hadn't said for weeks. The one that sat in my throat like a stone. The truth that made her tears irrelevant. Her mouth opened, then closed again. There was nothing left to argue. "I don't expect forgiveness," she whispered. "Good," I said. For a long while, we just stood there. People passed us, some glanced, most didn't. Strangers wrapped in scarves and earbuds, sipping caramel drinks, and scrolling through lives that weren't currently unraveling. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "I lost everything, didn't I?" I didn't answer, not to be cruel, but because some things don't need confirming. Back home, I didn't turn on the lights, just dropped my keys in the bowl, gave Milo a pat, and walked to the backyard. The firewood wasn't going to split itself. I chopped until my palms blistered. The axe bit the air and then the grain, over and over. It wasn't about the wood, it wasn't about the cold, it was about needing the ache. Something honest, something that answered back. She stood there with shaking hands, a sealed envelope, my old hoodie, and a belly I couldn't ignore. It was the first Thursday of January. Snow drifted in quiet spirals outside, not enough to stick, just enough to remind you the world was still moving, whether you were ready or not. Inside, I was setting the table. Roast chicken just finished resting rosemary bread from the bakery on 12th Street, still warm in the paper bag. Natalie had texted that she was 10 minutes away. I'd even lit a candle, the one that smelled vaguely of cedar, and something I couldn't name but liked anyway. Milo barked twice, short, curious. I opened the door. And there she was, Vanessa, standing under the porch light like a ghost who forgot she'd already haunted this place. She wasn't crying. Her eyes weren't red. but she looked like someone who'd cried so much it didn't change her face anymore. The hoodie swallowed her shape, but not completely. I saw it. The curve of her belly. A quiet declaration. She didn't say hi, just extended her hand with a manila envelope. It had weight. Finality. My name was on the label printed neatly in black ink. What is this? I asked, my voice steadier than my heart. Just read it, she said. She let the envelope linger in the air between us, like she needed me to take it so the burden could shift even a little. I didn't take it right away. I looked at her again, at the slight swell under the hoodie, at the familiar way she stood on the third step down, the one that always tilted a bit to the left. And then it hit me. This wasn't a maybe. This wasn't a story. This was flesh-blood time consequence. You're pregnant, I said. She nodded. Almost 20 weeks. There was no wind, no drama, just the low hum of the oven inside and the sound of my own breath reminding me I was still standing. I didn't know how to tell you, she continued. I wanted to be sure. I wanted it to not be real for a while, if I'm honest. The envelope shifted in her hand. And the test, I asked. 99.9%. It's yours, Caleb. I took it then, the envelope. Still warm from her fingers. Still heavier than it should have been. I've been alone for all of it, she said, eyes soft but not pleading. The appointments, the ultrasounds, even the day I first felt him kick. Him, I asked. I don't know. I think so. Haven't asked. Didn't want to make it more real. She looked away then toward the mailbox we'd painted together in happier weeks. The paint had started to peel at the edges. I'm not here to ask for anything, she added. I just thought you should know. I owed you that much. I didn't say anything. The candle in the window flickered behind me. The oven beeped, reminding me there was a dinner I'd planned. A dinner that would no longer happen. She took a breath. I thought if I told you, maybe I could breathe again. And now I asked. She shrugged. Now I'll just go. I didn't invite her in. I didn't reach for her hand. I just said, not now. She nodded. No anger. No drama. Just the quiet understanding that some doors only open one way. She turned, stepping carefully down the icy stairs. One hand rested protectively over her belly. I watched her walk back to her car, headlights blinking in the dark. Inside, I picked up my phone. Natalie had messaged, "Still okay," for 6:30. I stared at it for a long while before I replied. Something came up. Can we rain check? No explanation. Not yet. I sat on the couch with the envelope in my lap. Milo rested his chin on my foot-tail still. The house smelled of rosemary and hope. I wasn't sure I deserved. Eventually I opened it, the kind of sterile language only medical reports have. Genetic markers, test results. A single paragraph that ended with my name and a number I couldn't argue with. I leaned back, closed my eyes. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Just tired. Tired of being surprised by someone I thought I knew better than anyone. Later that night, I listened to a voicemail I'd ignored earlier. Todd, my old supervisor from the design firm. Hey, Caleb. Just checking in. No pressure, but we miss you around here. If you're thinking about coming back, the door's always open. I let the message replay twice. Not because I needed to hear it, but because something about the way he said door felt different now. Milo looked up at me, ears perked, like he expected me to speak. Well, buddy, I said, voice quiet. Looks like someone's going to call me Dad. He blinked, then gave a single content tail thump. Like he understood. Or maybe like he didn't need to. I didn't sleep that night, not from fear, but because I spent hours imagining what it would feel like to have a tiny hand wrap around my finger. And for the first time in months, that thought didn't feel like loss. It felt like beginning again. I didn't go to the baby shower. I stayed home and planted tomatoes instead. There's something honest about watching seeds disappear into earth, trusting they'll know what to do next. The soil that morning was soft, pliable from the night's rain, and smelled like spring waking up. I knelt by the patch I'd cleared last week, just beyond the rose bush, that never really took, and started pressing seeds into furrows I traced with my finger. The porch rail creaked behind me. Vanessa's old hoodie still hung there, folded neatly like she'd left it just the day before, though it had been weeks. The color had faded once, deep teal, now a dusty echo of itself, but I left it alone. Milo padded around the edge of the yard tail, flicking nose in every corner. He wasn't much for digging, but he always stayed close when I was in the garden, like he knew something sacred was going on. Plant something when you're ready to stay, Vanessa once said. She meant it then, maybe in that way people do, when they're trying to be poetic, or maybe to drop hints without sounding desperate. I hadn't stayed not in the house we picked out together, not in the plans we made. But I stayed honest. I didn't fake forgiveness, didn't rehearse resentment. I let things hurt in their own way. The screen door gave a soft groan. I turned dirt still on my palms. Vanessa walked toward me with a tall glass of lemonade. Not the store-bought kind. The one with too much pulp, just how I liked it when we were still us. Her steps were slower now, the roundness of pregnancy guiding her gait. She set the glass down on the edge of the porch and folded her arms like she didn't know whether to speak or sit. "Thought you'd like this?" she said. "Thanks," I murmured, wiping my hands on my jeans. She nodded, but didn't look away. "You're still kind." Even now, there was a silence between us. Not heavy, but full. I let it sit. "How are the tomatoes?" she asked. "They'll be ready before she is," I said. We both knew who I meant. She smiled the tired kind of smile that comes from too many emotions and not enough peace. "She's strong," Vanessa said. "She kicks like she's got something to prove. Sounds like her mother." That made her laugh, really laugh. It startled both of us. Then she sat beside me on the edge of the porch. We didn't talk about the baby's last name. Or mine. We just watched Milo chase something invisible in the breeze. The widow next door came over not long after holding a pie with a napkin like it might still burn her fingers. "Figured you could use something sweet," she said, eyes flicking between me and Vanessa. "Appreciate it," I said. She gave a little nod. "You're handling all this better than most would, Caleb." I didn't argue, didn't explain. I just took the pie and thanked her again. Vanessa looked like she wanted to say more, but didn't. She touched my shoulder gently as she stood, and for a moment I thought she might cry. But she didn't. Just gave a quiet, "See you soon," and left. Later that evening, I sat at the kitchen table, lights dim Milo at my feet. The journal I'd kept mostly blank, save a few entries, lay open. I flipped to a clean page and wrote, April 8th. The girl will have a garden. I won't fail her soil. The garden had always been more of an idea than a space. When we bought the house, it was just patchy grass and weeds. I used to say we'd turn it into something together, grapes on the trellis, maybe a small herb spiral. But like a lot of things, it stayed on the list of someday projects. When she left, the list stayed. I just stopped using we. It's funny how quiet becomes a routine. I wake, I water, I write. Sometimes I talk to Milo out loud just to break the hush. He never answers, but he tilts his head in that way dogs do, like he's holding space for whatever I need to say. Natalie sent a message a few days ago. Just a simple line. Still thinking of you. Hope you're okay. I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't care. She was kind in ways Vanessa hadn't always been, but because sometimes kindness stings more when you're not sure you've earned it. I thought about that as I cleaned the garden tools that night. The sound of metal brushing against stone brought back memories of my dad sharpening blades out in the shed. He used to say, "Even if you don't have the words, clean your tools, it means you're planning to keep going." I didn't know if I was planning anything, but the act felt like faith. I wrote more in the journal that night, not just for the baby, but for me. A kind of record. Tomatoes don't ask who planted them, I wrote. They just grow where they're trusted. I underlined it, then smiled at myself. Getting old means you start sounding like a book of quotes nobody asked to read. The phone buzzed again as I was brushing off the porch steps. Another message from Vanessa. This time a photo ultrasound, black and white, grainy and miraculous. She hadn't said anything else. She didn't have to. I stared at it longer than I meant to. My reflection in the screen looked older than I remembered. Grayer, softer, but steadier too. I sent back a single word, beautiful. I didn't know what kind of father I'd be. I wasn't even sure I'd be called that. But I knew this. The garden would be ready. The porch light would be on. And when she was old enough, I'd show her where the butterflies land in the morning and how to tell when the tomatoes are ripe. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it always had been. Some mornings don't need grand resolutions. Just soil under your nails, a good dog by your side, and the quiet knowing that something real is growing, even if it started from something broken. I didn't get the ending I once prayed for, but I found something else a reason to show up, to care, to become someone steadier than I used to be. Turns out peace doesn't always arrive with closure. It sometimes comes with a name on a birth certificate and a promise written in a journal. Life doesn't hand us fairness. It hands us choices. And when those choices hurt, we still get to decide what kind of person we become after. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's gardening in hard soil. It's knowing not everything you plant will bloom, but planting anyway. If you've ever been asked to carry more than your share, or to love in spite of disappointment, I hope this story reminded you quiet strength matters. Dignity matters. And sometimes healing begins the moment you stop needing to be right and just choose to be kind. If this touched something familiar in your heart, I'd be honored to hear your thoughts. Whether you've lived through something similar or simply want to share your own garden of memories, I'm listening. After all, we heal better when we know we're not alone.